way to put off an investor is to go like, I've got a great idea and like I'm going to do amazing things, but like I'm now going to learn how I'm going to actually build a business. I am Albert Symons, Azis-Clauson. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Underpinned.
And I'm Jack Williams. I'm the CCO, which is Chief Communications Officer, and the other co-founder of Underpinned.
And what do you do at Underpinned?
So Underpinned is basically a platform to help people build their freelance careers. Like the core principle of Underpinned is helping people build successful businesses around their craft. And the kind of core principles behind that are, there's obviously a huge movement towards freelancing, future of work formats. But one of the issues that the freelance economy has really faced is that no one's ever really left university or full-time employment knowing how to build a business or a freelance business. And so people often approach it more like a gig worker or like a laborer or a service provider and don't really think about themselves as a business. So Underpin was kind of set up to help people move away from gig style work as a skilled freelancer and towards building successful, sustainable businesses as a freelancer. And that's done through education, community, and then a kind of tech suite, which we call the virtual office, which sits at the heart of everything, where you can do all of your admin and project management in one place.
Yeah, and I think we've seen the number of freelancers and this more, I suppose, flexible working increasing anyway, but I assume you've seen a massive uprise in the last sort of year to 18 months.
Yeah, a big tick. All of the numbers. We were just reading over some reports from People Per Hour and Upwork, whether it's in Europe or actually in the States. The numbers have massively boomed. Mostly, interestingly, in the sort of starter area of freelancing, as we sort of call it. So new, fresh faces coming into the industry. A lot of the people with a little bit more experience have been sort of cycling back into full-time work, as that's been more consistent. But people who actually now have the time for various reasons to go freelance have been using that as using this time as a time to sort of build up their side hustles or the beginning of their freelance businesses.
We've kind of seen it as being like a big push from freelancers in terms of people just having more time and starting up their hobbies and turning them into side hustles, and obviously people losing their jobs, unfortunately. But the other side is this big pull of companies suddenly en masse using remote communication technology that they hadn't previously used in the same way, working with their full-time employees in the same ways they would have worked with freelancers, and also like looking to build more efficient teams. And so suddenly the technology's in place, the culture's in place, and so everyone's kind of going, wow, this freelancing thing makes way more sense than I'd previously thought. So we're seeing like a big rise, both on the client side as well as the freelance side.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a need for it. So take me back to a few years ago, launching the business. How did you initially realize there was a need for this, and what made you really jump into it?
So Jack and I had quite different and also quite similar backgrounds. And I was a business strategy consultant, as Jack describes it, a highfalutin tootin' business strategy consultant. Yeah. Working with kind of medium-sized businesses, mostly in science, tech, and creative sectors. Loving what I was doing, like really interested in solving problems for businesses, generally relatively simple problems that you're solving, like how do we improve our efficiency, how do we get more customers or clients, how do we improve our product narratives, but set within quite complex systems that there's lots of moving parts in. And on the other side, with Jack, I ran a media and arts company that was all about helping emerging artists build careers, and it was a lot of fun. But the kind of core principle of that was, how do you build a business out of being an artist? And it started with fine artists, and by the end we were talking to accountants, because it's slowly gone through designers to marketeers to architects to consultants to accountants, and we realized that it wasn't the creative thing, it was the style of work thing that was what was happening. And Jack, I mean, you can say what you were doing at the time.
Yeah, no, thanks. Because I laugh only because while Albert was doing his thing, I was doing penny copywriting and editing jobs on Upwork and People Per Hour and all those great sites. And I had that experience with Albert as well, where the realization that essentially all of these guys were great hard skills, had the ability to do the work that they needed to do. But when it came to the business side, really until you're quite advanced in your career, you're struggling to do the actual business side of that. And I was included in that as well, very, very fresh faced, definitely being like, so many questions that I had no idea where to turn and what to do in order to get to that next stage of my career. And we said to ourselves, actually, like, people are trying to solve this issue from an industry perspective. So people are trying to do it within the creative industry, or or within accounting, to use an example that Albert gave, but they're not trying to do it from a time period perspective. Like, they're not trying to actually embrace one aspect of freelancing and build from there. And that's essentially what we tried to do, is to onboard these early stage freelancers and help them actually build their career into something more successful.
It boiled down to, sorry.
Go for it.
I was going to say, it boiled down to like two pretty simple principles. Like, one was freelancers were desperate to build successful careers, but were being pushed towards competition on price on recruitment sites like Upwork and Fiverr, didn't really know where else to go for work, but wanted to build something successful and didn't really know how to. So that was like an obvious problem that needed to be solved, because, we could see there's loads of established freelancers, and how do we get these people to that stage? But the other side of it, which I think is kind of interesting, is like, we've seen this massive rise in massive B2B SaaS companies, massive enterprise SaaS companies. We can name, you can name loads just off the top of your head that you see around all the time. And their whole principle was built on, like, in the end of the 90s, early noughties, we saw this massive rise of SME agencies and SME businesses as a whole, because of communication technology allowing for a greater divisibility of labor and greater specialization. And that's like just gone to the next logical step, which is, well, why do we need a whole company with all this infrastructure when an individual can be even more specialized and have an even greater level of specificity? And so freelancing has suddenly found its new path. But the problem is, all this technology is designed for companies who have departments with special departmental functions. And so we were like, that's not relevant. Freelancers feel like an add-on and they don't want 10 services. We need a simple service that does all of these things in one place, that's designed for this new way of working, which is freelancing.
So it sounds like there's quite a natural progression then from the artist to say the accountants and so on, as you were sort of proving this model. What was the moment where you were like, you know what, there's a real business here and we could have a good go at it?
To be honest, I think like we were already kind of in that entrepreneurial mindset of being like, we love this business that we're doing now, but it's like a passion project, and the financial side of it doesn't really make much sense yet. It developed so organically over such a long period of time, which I think is quite regular for often people's like first businesses, that they're with friends and it develops over quite a long time. So it lacks kind of structure. And we were both having these careers on the side of it. And we kind of sat down one day, and I basically said to Jat, like, we've been talking about this kind of thing for a while. This is what I think it could be. Like, are you crazy enough to jump in and let's just see if we can do this? And it was quite a weird scenario, because most people, that journey is quite long. But I think we first ever sat down end of June 2018. August 8th, we incorporated a company, and we drew down our first, I think, 150K of investment on October 1st. So like, it was like boom, boom, boom after we decided to get going. But it wasn't so much like it felt like it was the thing that we needed to do. Like, the idea had probably been developing for 3 years, but it's suddenly been like, wait, this is the moment we should be doing this. Let's go and just talk to people and see if this is crazy. And we did, and it wasn't, and we're here.
And there's another aspect to that as well, where like, we get that sort of that answer to did we realize this was a real business every day, right? That like, so, we went into this being like, oh, we're going to be working mostly with young people, or we learned pretty quickly actually that people of all ages, that our audience shouldn't just be branded to Gen Z and millennials, that actually the older generations want to learn this stuff as well, because when people retire, or when people have children, or for various different reasons, people start to wonder, can I actually go off and do it on my own? And there's been lots of different insights into our audience that has made us have that realization, even well beyond when we actually incorporated and actually pulled down money, that this is such a growing and important sector, right? That like, if you look at the numbers of people who will be estimated to be doing this kind of work by the time we hit 2025, 2030, and the exponential rate at which they've been growing, that like, that proof comes anew every single day in just a slightly different way.
And it goes from, I suppose, a couple of good friends starting a business to a very serious organization where you start bringing in external people, particularly external money and investors. So talk to me a bit about that process.
The learning curve was steep and like intense. And I think that there's like such a huge chasm between that, like, I want to start a business, I'm kind of hustling, to I'm now building the infrastructure of a real business with other people's money. Like the amount of, I remember spending 5 hours reading about pensions 2 months into starting a startup and being like, this is not what I signed up for. I'm being like, there was so much that we had to learn so quickly and get the right people in, and making decisions about content and processes that you're learning about as you're making the decisions about it is really stressful. But at the same time, I think we were so excited and energized by what we wanted to do. And we got, and I'm not gonna lie, like we got incredibly lucky to get money so quickly. Like that's a rarity in this world to be able to do that in that kind of time frame, and like an unrealistic expectation for somebody starting a business. We got very lucky, and I know that. But then once we hit the ground running, it was like, now we have this responsibility to like learn and learn and learn. So we, like I said, like we read about pensions and lawyers and like learning all of the different kind of formats for it. But it was very daunting. And then what I realized, like looking back, was we also didn't know a shitload. Sorry, I don't know if I can swear, but like we didn't know a lot of stuff as well. Like, and now like, looking back, like the process of hiring, like if I was to go back and like say one thing to myself, it would all be about the people that you bring in and making sure that they're the right people to do the job, and that you bring in more senior people rather than more junior people. Because that's, I think, one of the biggest difficulties. Don't assume that you have to know what you're doing, because we didn't, and we had to learn very quickly.
I think there's so much focus, right, on investment, and the reality is that the most important thing you can be doing at this stage of your business is thinking about recruiting. So much, so a lot of this is luck. I think Albert made that point pretty well, but a lot of it is luck and recognizing the things that you can do to improve your odds. And hiring well, and not just hiring well in the sense of like people who can build your product, but also people who can market and people who can do PR for you and various topics. Like hiring well is going to be the thing that brings in investment, especially for an early stage startup. People are going to be looking, and having a good pitch deck as well. It's never a thing that you should say no to. But hiring well and means that people, investors will see your company and see your deck and say, all right, this seems like a decent idea, but the team is the most important thing behind this.
Yeah, like the founders sell the vision and the team sells the like efficacy of the plan. Like if I came in day one and was like, hey, like I'm going to do this massive marketing strategy, and be like, you have no idea what you're doing, Albert. Like I get that you're energetic and I can see you're passionate about this, but you don't know what SEO marketing really is. And it's like, so that's like the really key thing. Like people invest in the people, but they invest in the founders for the vision, but they invest in the team to be like, are these the actual people that can actually deliver this crazy plan that you're trying to put together? And yeah.
So you talk about, well, there's a couple of things there. You talk about the fact that you feel lucky that you secured investment so quickly, but things like the team, there must be certain things that you look back and say, we didn't know it at the time, but we actually got that absolutely right. For that, you feel lucky. Was there anything else other than the team and the deck that you had in place?
I think that like there's two like when I say, okay, I think like the phrase luck could be potentially misleading, because there's things that you need to get right. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, even if you get everything right, you then need luck. So like it's like if there are 100 people who have got it right, 10 of them get the opportunity to then actually go and do it. So like then there needed to be a lot behind it. So when I say lucky, I mean the circumstance and opportunity for funding to come together for first-time founders. And that's a really important point. Like the difference in raising capital from a first-time founder to a second-time founder is massive. Like I now have a network of investors and VCs and angels that I know and am friends with and can talk to. Like if I would start another business, I wouldn't be starting from scratch. It would be like a much easier process. For first-time founders particularly, finding the right people, whether it's through friends or family or network or whatever, like that is a process of circumstance. But what you absolutely need, and like I think what we did really well, is from day one, we considered ourselves a year in business. Like what does our financial plan look like as a real business, taking this really seriously throughout a whole period? And what I've noticed a lot of early stage founders doing, to their massive detriment, is they're going to investors with a fantastic idea and like a pretty solid plan, but like it's small time thinking. They're going to them with like what they understand and what they can do. And the best way to put off an investor is to go like, I've got a great idea and like I'm going to do amazing things, but like I'm now going to learn how I'm going to actually build a business. So like when the first time we went to an investor, the first thing we said was, look, I planned out every penny for an 18-month period and mapped it against like how that was going to be delivered and who would be hired to do those roles and what that would look like. And most founders at that stage, they don't know how to do that, because the big thing here being a first-time founder is a real, like, someone is taking a chance on you because you've never done it before and you don't know the processes. So you need to do absolutely everything to make somebody be like, if there's any lack of confidence, it's going to be like, it might not be the right time and it might not be the right thing. And startups are high risk, but this plan makes sense. The person knows what they're doing and they've looked at everything they need to look at. And you've got to bear in mind, like, investors, almost without exception, have run businesses and been important in businesses and know what that plan looks like. So if you go to them without that plan and without those constituent elements together, like, they see it very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've touched on it a number of times, just how important that team is around you, whether it be right at the start or as you're going through funding as well. So what are your sort of tips and advice for finding the right people?
Oh my, it's so, the recruitment is like a minefield of stress and anxiety, but there is, and like it never gets better, like, and it will never get better. But I think that there's a couple of things you can do which people often don't do. When you're going for investment, bake your hires into the investment, which people often forget to do. And so like when you go to them, say, I need what this person looks like, and I can, can find them and what kind of person they are.
Albert, that sounds like a really important point, and we just missed you for a second. Would you mind going to the beginning of that? You're talking about baking them.
Yeah, of course. So the key thing here, can you hear me now? Yeah. Sorry, someone called me. But so baking people into your investment. So like what most people do is they'll be like, we're gonna grow, and then we're gonna find out who we need to hire, then we're gonna hire. But the very day one, doing like a few things, going, this is the person we need to achieve this plan. This is what that person would look like, and I can describe their characteristics. These are some potentially even examples of that person in other companies that we could try and headhunt. And they might not be the people you ever hire, but it shows that you understand, that you know that there's a gap in your knowledge, because the people that you're hiring inevitably need to be the people who are better at doing that job than you are. So like I hired our head of marketing because they are better at marketing than Jack or I could ever be. We hired a head of product for the same reasons. Like Jack and I work together because I'm the excitable puffy that has stupid ideas, and Jack is like the level head that's like, this is a more sensible plan of how we're actually going to be successful. And like Jack's great at communication and words and language, and I'm better at the kind of financial and tech side. So like we complement each other in the way that we work. But when you go for investment, going like, I know that I'm going to need these people, and don't be scared to say, this person is going to cost £60,000, but they're going to deliver this in year one. And so baking that process into investment, and include fees for recruitment, and also include fees for raising money. Like raising money costs money. If you want to raise £300,000, you've got to assume it's going to cost you 5 to 10% to raise. So you need £15,000 to £30,000 extra to your 300, because you're going to spend that on lawyers and fees, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
One thing that I would say quickly as well to add on to that is that people don't think about human resources that need to be actually included in early startup companies. That like a lot of the times you're going to be going to people who work at big firms or big companies and trying to get them on board. And if you don't have an onboarding process and you don't have a review process, the person knows that they're going to be stepping into a potentially difficult work scenario where, you know, if it's Underpinned in 2018, it's two guys trying to figure out how to build this business. But even if it's Underpinned in 2021, it's a team of people, but that can potentially be difficult to work with. But what we've done and what we did really quickly was actually saying, all right, we need to make sure that actually when the hires know that when they're going through the interview process, they're actually going to have an onboarding process. There's going to be regular reviews, so that there's never a point that they feel that either they're not contributing in the way that they have been brought on to contribute, and that they're not being listened to by the founders as well. So that's just a really important part for, if you're looking for the right people for your team, make sure you're treating them in the right way early on.
I think people forget that you're selling the dream to them as well. So like, you know, all of our hires will say like, I chose to work here because Jack and Albert sold me this dream and like I bought into it. And like, if you can't get somebody to work for you, how would you get somebody to invest in you? Like, it's the same process. Like, when you get somebody to invest in you, you sell them the dream and the upside, because they're taking on, they're taking on a risk of losing all of their money. Like, there is no security at all. I could just tomorrow be like, I'm done with this, I'm leaving. All the £2 million that are in our business just like disappear. And that wouldn't happen now because we have a business. But like, if I'd done it in the early days, or Jack and I had been like, we're done with this. And it's the same thing with somebody you're hiring. Like, you want to sell them your vision and your dream and go like, aim higher than the junior. Like, it's so tempting to be like, I'm going to hire junior people, but hire people who have done it before, or bake into your investment plan, we're going to spend 3 months finding the right people to do these things while we're proving out these other parts of the business or whatever else it is.
Yeah. And have you found managing the onboarding process and maintaining company culture while everything's been remote?
Jack, that's all you, baby.
I mean, so from a remote perspective, it's actually just been upping the amount that we meet. I know that that's a big turnoff for people, but actually it's just a necessity if you're not face-to-face in the office all the time. So we built in regular morning stand-ups as opposed to doing it once a week, but also being just stricter about having one-on-one conversations when you need to, especially with people in your department as well. The onboarding process, I mean, in a big way, it has meant that we have been a lot more reliant on technology and actually the quality of the recruiters that we're working with as well at the same time, because it means that instead of actually being able to have face-to-face interviews, we've had to do things over the phone or over Zoom. But I think the positives of remote work in terms of hiring outweigh the benefits in my perspective, because it means that for us, we aren't just limited to hiring in London now. We can hire anywhere within our time zone. So that's really exciting for us, and that's actually opened up a lot of options for us too at the same time. But yeah, that's basically it for me.
Okay. And what's next for the business then? What are the goals for the next sort of 12 months or so?
Explosion. We're about to take over the world, mate. We are about to go, things are about to get very, very exciting. So COVID was a weird kind of blessing in disguise in some ways. I mean, it's been horrible in most ways, but we've had the opportunity to, one, make our business a lot more efficient. Two, we've gone from a massive macro trend to a total revolution in the future of work. And it's going to mean that there has basically never been a better time to invest in the future of work. And I'm like, Fiverr was the second best performing stock in America. Like, the levels of wealth that are being put into this problem are massive. So whereas we had really exciting plans for the next 12, 24 months, we now have like those plans 10x, because investors are getting so excited about us and about our space that we're going like, I can't talk about the details of it. Like, we were going to be raising a certain amount of money. We're now raising an a multiple of that certain amount of money, because people are so excited about the space. So the big things for us are to try not to go too quickly, which I know sounds like a slightly silly aim, but like, it's very easy to get excited by rapid growth and lots of cash. But the trick is like product stickiness and product market fit, and maintaining that throughout your growth is so important, that rather than trying to capture this whole market really quickly and be a WeWork, we want to really make an effort to make sure that like our unit economics are continuing to make sense, that our product stickiness is continuing to make sense, that our product's being developed in a sensible and like intuitive way. And then the basic plan is 18 months, 2 years from now, we're going to go, I'm expecting us to kind of, that's the point where we go from, taking capital to build a company to taking capital to scale it around the world.
Yeah, all I'll say, Albert's put everything in there. All I'll say is growth and education, not just for us, but for our users as well. Growth and education.
Yeah, well, like we've learned a lot.
It certainly sounds like an exciting time then. So for those watching, where can they find out more about both yourselves and the business?
I think like check out the page underpinned.com. I think our Instagram is a great way to follow us. I personally am fairly active on LinkedIn talking about stuff that's going on, and like to share what's going on at Underpinned and kind of general trends and stuff. But all of we're Underpinned on all of the social medias. You can find us everywhere.
Yeah.
There's
Make an
account
going
on.
Make an account. There will always be a version of Underpinned that's free. Make an account. Tell us what you like about it. Tell us what you don't like. Do that today. Do that right now, and follow us.